You're listening to Agile Ideas, the podcast, hosted by Fatima Abuchi. For anyone listening out there not having a good day, please know there is help out there. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Agile Ideas, the podcast. Thank you so much for joining me once again. I'm Fatima, CEO at Agile Management Office, Mental Health Ambassador, and your host. On today's episode, I will be interviewing and speaking with Miss Kathy Berkidge. Kathy has a background in software development, is an Agile business analyst professional with over 30 years of experience in IT. She provides business analysis and Agile training and consulting services to many organizations in a variety of industries, as well as speaking internationally on topics relating to Agile, mindset, and business analysis. Kathy works with teams to improve teamwork, be more innovative, and deliver better customer value. She's passionate about seeing people, teams, and organizations thrive in an environment of collaboration and harmony. She's also a dedicated mindfulness practitioner and is passionate about all things mindfulness. Her other passions include travel, writing, and photography. As well as she's studying psychology and philosophy, as well as trying to find time to write her first novel. She works with the company and runs Mind at Work Consulting, which provides training, coaching, mentoring, and consulting services to improve and develop genuine team collaboration, as well as implement Agile practices and techniques more effectively. She's delivered workshops and presentations at a number of local and international Agile and business conferences all around the world: Bangalore, London, Texas, Washington, Melbourne, Boston, Brussels, Hungary, and the Czech Republic. She delivers on-site training, consulting services, and develops and customizes course content, and also has lots of time spent in actually executing and supporting projects. I met Kathy many years ago and have also worked with her in a training capacity. And she is a very engaging training professional. And she's also very knowledgeable in all things Agile. You'd have to be when you are spending all your time training and talking about those topics. So I'm very excited to have her on the podcast today. Lots to discuss and cover. So thank you for being with us today, and welcome to Kathy. Kathy, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, Fatima. I'm really looking forward to talking with you.
I know, considering how many times you and I have worked together or, spoken, I just thought it's so unusual we haven't done this already. So it actually works out really well, I think, to take the value that you've got, bring it into this conversation so that other people can benefit from it, not just myself and the team. So thank you again. I want to kick off with something. I know you're about to head off abroad again and you're always traveling. I'm curious, with all the places you've been and experiences you've had, what's been your most memorable travel experience, regardless of whether it's work-related or not?
Wow, there's just so many, but there has to be one that comes to mind. I actually didn't travel at all until my daughter basically left home. So my first big overseas trip was back in 2005. Before that, I'd pretty much never left the country.
Wow.
That was an around the world trip. And I started off by meeting some friends in LA and then Las Vegas. And we did some driving to the Grand Canyon. But that's not the memorable experience. The next part of that trip was a trip for our 5 days in New York. And I landed at night. I got into my room quite late and I went to sleep, as you do, because I was exhausted. And the next day I woke up and looked out and I could see the Empire State Building. And there's this thing about New York, I'd always dreamed about going to New York and it was like a dream come true. And then I just happened to put on a TV. And as in America, there's a million channels. And what was on TV? The show Sex and the City.
Okay.
And I remember just going, I'm in New York, I've got Sex and the City going on because I love that show. And of course, it's all based in New York. And I looked and I could see that skyline. And I just pretty much just got choked up. It was like, I can't believe I'm finally here. And because I really hadn't traveled before and it was somewhere I really was looking forward to going, it was probably still sticks with me as wow, I'd already done Vegas and the Grand Canyon, and they were fabulous. But that waking up in New York and seeing that was hard to beat. But I mean, there's so many more, but that's the one that sticks to mind now.
I didn't know that you only started traveling in 2005, and it's fascinating because the amount of places you've been, you're clearly making up for lost time. So that's good. Oh, that's so good. I hope to get back to the US. I've only been to Hawaii, but like you traveled recent years. So I think it does get easier. Thinking about the fact that you've spent so much time abroad, you've obviously done a lot of speaking engagements everywhere, and I'm kind of keen. What do you find is the most sort of requested topic that people need help uncovering or understanding that comes around time and time again? What do you think is like what people are talking about now?
Definitely AI. Without a doubt, in every circle, it comes up over and over again. We actually, in some of our conference talks, we actually did a mock-up of being ChatGPT and put on an avatar, and we were talking about business analysis, and we even did some ChatGPT challenges. One of our sessions was facilitated by someone who's played with it a lot more than I have, and tried to get ChatGPT to do things that it's not meant to, and it's quite amazing how quickly you can get around some of their controls. But it comes up a lot because people are very concerned about ChatGPT and other AI tools replacing us humans. And I have played with it a little bit myself, and I think the answer is no. There's some things that it's going to do amazing, but there's a lot of things that it will never do. I've challenged it to write one of my own talks, and it did a great job, but it was pretty inaccurate in some parts and pretty clunky. And I thought, well, that's because there's not that human element. That's what I like to bring to my talks when I'm talking about anything of Agile, whether it's Agile or mindfulness or stakeholder engagement. I talk about a few things, but it's never going to replicate that human empathy, emotion thing. But certainly it's the topic that it comes up, and it seems to be questioned a lot by participants, and speakers are talking about it a lot more than they were, say, even only a couple of years ago.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I have this debate. My husband always says to me, "Oh, your job's going to be taken over by AI." Being in project management, and I agree with you on the sort of soft skill side and the bits that can't be replaced. It's very situational, that those sorts of things and how you react and respond to those. To those environments and how we do things. But to your point, I've used it as well, and you need to try out these things. I'm curious, does this now factor into any of your training that you're doing? Is that something that's coming up that needs to be factored in, or has that not come about yet?
I think it does need to be factored in, and I think people who don't anticipate the impact of AI and AI tools in all sorts of jobs, whether it's in IT or regular, any part of business, we do need to factor in that, look, it can be a tool. It can be a valuable tool that can supplement and complement the real work that we do. I mean, hey, I put in, I'm not sure if I mentioned it, but my daughter got married last December, and just for fun, I asked ChatGPT to plan a wedding of a very similar sort of style to my daughter's, and it was fabulous how it came up with pretty much, what was needed. And it really can give you a massive head start. It may not be the final draft, but it will be maybe the first draft that will save a lot of work, especially for things that are quite well known, routine, mundane. It just takes away some of perhaps makes us more effective and efficient. So I think understanding how we can leverage it, not be frightened of it, and say, look, it's not going to replace us, but we can certainly make our lives easier. So yes, I think more training needs to take it into account. The certificate courses that I teach have no mention of it as yet, but I think that will have to change. So yeah, I think training needs to evolve.
Absolutely. I'm keen to see how that does integrate into the training, as no doubt it will. Thinking about, we're talking about IT, thinking about your background, you started in software development. And this is well and truly before, really Agile became a thing or a concept. And I know you talk a bit about that as well. I was reading in your biography the funny story around the fact that, at the time you thought, well, what's this Agile thing? It's going to go away. And now all these years later, It's so prevalent. So how did you go from, being in IT and sort of spending that time to actually really being an advocate of Agile all these years later? And what is it about Agile that you love?
Wow. So I hated Agile. So funnily enough, in the 90s, we were doing this thing called RAD, which is one of the earlier Agile frameworks. But of course, it was never called Agile then, because that was before the word Agile came about, which was in the year 2001 when the manifesto was written by Alistair Cockburn and the rest of those Agile anarchists, as they call themselves. So in 2005, I was on a big project, and it was a website redesign, and it was a typical thing I was doing as a business analyst, writing the specification. The specification was hundreds of pages long with every single screen and font and message and title and everything of the website. And the marketing team and the MD were really frustrated that we hadn't got any development started, because it was the typical waterfall, wait for the specification to be signed off before any development started. So I remember very clearly after a review meeting where more changes were still required before it was signed, he went through us like a hot knife through butter and told us, that's it, start now, I don't care. He was just so frustrated. So we went away, and our IT manager went and we did some research about this Scrum thing. That was all he knew about it. We didn't know it as Agile. We just knew it as Scrum.
Yes.
And he came in and presented the Scrum guide and said, right, this is how we're going to work. Let's go. Start with this, break it down. Let's prioritize. Let's start getting some sprints happening. And then he went, Kathy, you're a BA. And my friend Karen, you're a project manager. Scrum guide says we don't need BAs or project managers. So how about you get over to special projects and BAU work, and the team will just carry on with Scrum. And I remember just looking at him and thinking, wow, this Agile Scrum thing is never going to work. No project managers, no business analysts, never going to work. And I remember just being absolutely disgusted. And I really just thought, this is never going to work. You watch, it's going to fall into a screaming heap. And it did for a little while, until they brought us back into the project to help them do Agile. So then I started seeing, hang on, this can work. The thing that changed my mind was working as a team and really experimenting, that we don't have to do everything by the book. Mm-hmm. It's all about showing actual progress and showing value and getting that feedback happening. Whether you do a sprint or you just have continuous engagement, I don't care which way you do it. Learning as you go, regardless of how much you think you know what's needed. Mm-hmm. Often you don't know what you really don't know. So it really helped. And so the reason I changed my mind was just seeing the results and knowing that it's that reduced that waste that was happening when we wrote specifications and found that they were wrong, and all that rework. And I realized, hey, this is a much smarter way to work. Let's write the spec as we're writing the code and developing the website. And simply put, seeing that value delivery happening was really what made me an Agile advocate. I've always been one for standing for the voice of value. As a business analyst, I've always felt that was my number one role, is to advocate for creating solutions for real stakeholders to solve real problems that create value. I mean, that's the definition of business analysis, and Agile was one tool that really aligned with my values.
It's a really interesting thing I pick up on, where the people you were working with at the time was like, oh, get rid of the BA and the project manager. It's so fascinating to me, because over the last 7 years of running AMO, I saw that as like the number one thing. They did that, and they did that with governance as well. So eliminated PMOs, particularly in our big banks, which, went on the Agile train the heaviest and probably spent the most money, and some of them still are. And what I constantly say to people, and I'm sure you'll agree with this, is the skills that, business analysts or project, whatever title you call them, are so completely transferable. I mean, right now I'm seeing project managers that are, if they're calling them Scrum Masters, they're acting in that capacity, or project coordinators that are stepping up. And so it's all relatable skills. So it's a shame that people are so black and white with it, when Agile is all about flexibility and adaptability. Do you think?
Absolutely fascinates me too. I've heard it so many times that, we don't need these roles or titles. I'm like, I don't care about the title. It's the role and the responsibility, not the title and the hat that you wear. It's really about coming together and enabling teams to deliver the value, no matter what your role, whether you are a developer, tester, analyst, governance board, does not matter. It's all about enablement. And it still happens today. I hear it all day, every day. Oh, I'm a product owner now. I'm not a BA. And I'm like, but is the role different? Perhaps not.
Exactly. It's a very challenging time for companies in that regard. They're trying to figure out what the roles and responsibilities and the titles. A lot of them are copying some very well-known frameworks and using those titles, but not actually factoring in the skills needed for the people that need to do the role. So thinking about things that people say and think when it comes to Agile, with a lot of the conferences you do when you speak to this topic, what are some of the most common questions that people ask or that you hear the most, whether it's debunking a myth about Agile or just something that they're curious about?
There's quite a few themes that tend to come up, particularly around governance, particularly about planning, but also quality. And that's something that I see, there's a lot of people calling it bad Agile, because there's a lot of bad Agile out there that don't adequately plan for and incorporate quality measures through the whole process. And I think of quality, like most people, and I'm sure yourself as well, there's two kind of primary elements to quality: the quality of the process, i.e. the process of how we're getting work done, the quality of project management or running Agile as a end-to-end process of getting work delivered. That's quality, but there's also quality of the deliverable. So both sides have to be thought of, and I'm finding that can be a real talking point where people think, but isn't it just about, getting stuff done? I'm like, yes, but with the right quality, the right checks and balances. So that comes up a fair bit. And again, the myth of should we be testing? How should we be testing? What's our definition of done? There's a lot of confusion about how that's created. What's acceptance criteria? How do we get it? So these are all quality aspects that I think still need work on. And I think the Agile framework, we kind of bake quality in. It really should be, because you're really checking and making sure at each sprint is not just delivering software, but you're delivering quality software, which includes governance requirements such as artifacts, documents, and other sign-offs. So, yeah, I think that's still coming up and still causing some confusion. And it's great to hear that it's still a good conversation that comes up at conferences on a frequent basis.
If you were surrounded by some Agile purists or over enthusiasts, you might hear them screaming, "What do you mean artifacts and deliverables and documents? That's not allowed in Agile." I mean, that just makes me laugh. Something that's constantly coming up. But I want to touch on the governance piece. So obviously that's where I live most of my days, in governance land. And it's so fascinating because the conversation, and I think we've spoken about this before, but the way I sort of translate governance in Agile is it's not changing the what, it's changing the how. So I always talk about putting agility into governance, not putting governance into Agile. And I'm seeing in some organizations, they're actually trying to overlay traditional, I'll just call it traditional, heavy governance over the Agile, whatever methodology that they want to use, the Agile-based ways of working. That's not working. But if they focus on the fact that governance is governance, regardless of what methodology or approach you use to deliver, you still need to understand what your budgets are. You still need to get sign-offs and approvals. You still have to go through a planning process. It's the how that changes. And I still don't understand why people don't get that. But it's interesting governance is coming up, because I agree. I think that's probably the most prominent question that I hear regularly in the circuit. So.
And I 100% echo what you're saying. It's not the what, it's the how. It's more like incremental, every sprint. In fact, I think Agile lends itself to better governance, because every sprint,
yes,
you're delivering, you're checking, you're signing off, you're going through approvals. You don't have to, but that mechanism is there readily, and it fits so well. In fact, disciplined Agile is what it's all about, to make sure that discipline is there. So we're not just delivering on on software, we're delivering the required sign-offs, checkpoints, and steering decisions. I teach it simply. Every sprint is a go, no go decision.
Yep.
At the end of each sprint, if you're doing a good structured sprint review, each sprint is go, no go. So it's actually even more structure than some of the traditional.
Yeah, 100%. And more communication and collaboration, which is so missing, I think, in some environments these days.
Exactly. There's more opportunity.
Yeah, 100%. And you mentioned Agile as a tool, but also people refer to Agile. Agile's a mindset. So, I talk about big A and small A Agile. And when it comes to small A Agile, the soft skills, the mindset, and all that sort of things, can you help people who don't understand what Agile mindset is to understand what does Agile mindset actually mean?
And it's, I always say mindset over method, right? Mindset over methodology.
Yes.
And as an Agile enthusiast, I quite often hear Agile methodology. And I say, well, which one? And people go, well, and then they don't know what they're talking about. And I find it fascinating. And even just yesterday, I was working with a government department, and we always start any Agile training to understand that mindset. And when we talk about mindset, we first have to understand, what does the word mindset actually mean? It means an attitude. It means a way of thinking. So we have to sort of start off by making sure that it's not just about sprints and points and Kanban walls and stories, user stories. We've got to start by thinking, hang on, how do we focus on teamwork? How do we focus on delivery of value? How do we focus on working closely with our customers and stakeholders? And how do we work closely so we can be responsive to change? And they're the first 4 values of the Agile Manifesto. And they're the kind of Southern Cross in the sky that we navigate by to say, this is what we should be adapting our way of thinking, that these are how we prioritize anything we do, whether it's a meeting or an email, a document, or in fact delivering software. It doesn't matter. We prioritize the way of thinking that focuses on those 4 key values: teamwork, value delivery, working with customers, adapting to change. So when we focus on that, and then we go further and we go into, again, the manifesto, I love it. I think it's as relevant today as it was ever, no matter what people say. You don't have to take the word software literally. You can just say solution of any kind. When we think of the 12 guiding principles, none of them tell anybody what to do or how to do it. They're telling us how we must approach our work, how we must be guided by these principles in the actual techniques and tools and processes that we enact to make sure that we are using them to guide the way of working and guide the way of thinking, which of course is what mindset is. The way of thinking should then be reflected into the way of working. So if we understand that way of thinking about focus on value delivery, and I'm not going to cite off every principle, but how do we deliver frequently? How do we get that feedback flowing? How do we make sure we're doing sustainable pace? How do we prioritize communication and effective communication? How do we incorporate continuous improvement? So these mindset attributes are those values being stated that we then shape. And I always put my hand around my head and feel like I'm shaping my mind by thinking about how do we use those principles to really use that, like I think of Play-Doh or something on our minds to really manipulate our minds to those kinds of thought processes and decision-making frameworks.
It's like, it's all a molding. I really like, now I think this is a visual in my head, way of thinking versus way of working. I really like that. I think that's a really good way of defining it. And it's really interesting because a lot of companies are really fixated on the way of working and the methods and the tools, but not actually on the way of thinking, and that part's not changing. And I get that, because you can't change your mindset that quickly, and overnight it takes time. So I think just figuring out a way to manage between that is going to be interesting and continue to be a challenge for customers. I'm curious to know, you talk about attitude and values and teamwork. Can you share some either practices or techniques that you would recommend, or that you see that are commonly most helpful for teams, particularly when they're, trying to build up that collaboration between them?
Absolutely. Whenever I go out to a team that's asked me to come in and coach, sometimes they've done training, sometimes they haven't. And one of the first things I talk about is, tell me about how you work together. Tell me about what works well, what doesn't. So I actually think about that retrospective process and making sure that it is done constructively. So I introduced tools such as the Agile Retrospective Prime Directive, which I'm trying to think of who the author is, but it wasn't me, that's for sure. It basically is a statement to ensure that people understand, really and truly believe that when we're in a retrospective and we're really trying to flesh out how we can improve, that there must be an underlying understanding that we're all doing the best job that we can. Mm-hmm. And the situation can be a nightmare. So we're coping, and we make that clear that this is a safe place, and we have to create that psychological safety in the team. Just to call a shovel a spade, dare I say it, if things aren't working, we've got to be able to voice it, because if you can't find it, you can't talk about it, you can't fix it.
Yes.
So making that psychological safety is one major tool. And the second tool is establishing a clear written document. Oh no,
God forbid.
Document, what's going on? An actual written document about a team charter.
Yes.
Now, team chartering is absolutely essential, and it can be used to enhance the retrospectives as well, because we can look back at the team charter as we're doing our retros and seeing, are these working for us? Are we working in the way that our charter told us? Mm-hmm. One of my favourite books on the subject happens to be right behind me. It's called Liftoff, How Do We Enable Agile Teams, by Ainsley Niles and Diana Larson. It's a wonderful book. It's a book that I have used over and over again and introduced to teams to help them create chartering. And I loved it so much, and I was inspired so much about chartering and how to create good charters, that I created a team collaboration canvas to kind of compartmentalize the various aspects of a team charter and kind of pigeonhole it into a canvas structure, like a lean canvas or a business model canvas. Same layout, 9 compartments, and then the team can brainstorm each of those 9 compartments to help kind of build their team charter. But some of it was based on what I've seen. Some of it was based on the team I was working with. We just happened to kind of put it on a sticky note, and it kind of came out that way. But I think team chartering and having realistic team charters created by the team for the team, most importantly, not by a scrum master telling the team, which I've seen that happen too.
100%.
Chartering and retrospectives, and making sure that people continue to do retrospectives. On the last point I want to make is the biggest mistake I see in many Agile teams. We're too busy for retrospectives. We're just going to keep going to the next sprint.
Yep.
And so then they keep telling me, we keep having this problem. And I'm thinking, I wonder why that happens.
100%.
Haven't got time, we're going to keep going. I said, that hour is probably the most valuable hour you're going to spend.
100%. Especially if you take, it's like your incremental lessons learned, effectively. It's if they're not doing that, then they can't improve in the next sprint. And it's interesting, one of the ones I see all the time is, we didn't deliver what we said we were going to deliver in the sprint. We'll just literally move it all into the next sprint. Like with no reflection, no review. And then it's the same problem week after week after week after week. It's, very interesting. I wanted to add one more. So I think your psychological safety, I 100% agree. If people don't feel safe at work or safe to speak up, it's near impossible to get that flow of work you need in a really good Agile team that's going to deliver value faster, sooner, safer, etc. I love the team charter. We use it all the time. We always recommend charters as opposed to 15 or 20 page framework documents that explain the same thing. So, and it's a collaborative exercise, not someone telling you. One that I found through Atlassian's treasure trove of tools and templates is they call them My User Manual. I'm not sure if you're familiar with that. Yeah. So that one's like the next level below the charter, where each team member in our team completes their user manual, which basically for those that don't know, it actually outlines how they like to work, how they like to receive feedback, what environments they're better in, things, it just gives you insight to that person. And then it helps us to navigate the best way to interact as a team, focusing on those things. So you nodded your head, so I assume you know which one I'm talking about.
Absolutely. I love that. And we had them in my teams before I was a consultant. We introduced that. It's something that I don't know how long it's been around, but I remember writing mine and everybody going, oh, here we go. But yeah, I think that user manual for yourself, just stating things like, Kathy, she's a morning person. Don't schedule meetings in the morning with Kathy. Anything before 11, she'll say no to. But it's so nice that we can make this real safe way to share our preferences and how we like it, how we like to collaborate, how we like to have focus time, how we need to address emails or those kinds of issues, because there's a bit of a scourge now of making emails are meant to be addressed and responded to immediately. I'm like, who decided that? Actually, I prefer a phone call if you need immediate action. An email is 24 to 48 hours sometimes, especially if I am traveling, like going back to where we started. So making that user manual of this is how we work, and then we can lay them out together as a team. And that is a great tool to really help build that charter that accounts for everyone's preferred ways of working, and those key kind of irritation points can be avoided. We can avoid conflict. We can avoid those passive aggressive little things that can creep into teams when we haven't really explored these preferences. I love that tool. Fantastic.
I've definitely written that, and the book you referenced, Lift Off. I haven't heard of that one in the show notes, because I think people could get some real value of just attempting that as a team, but doing it, like you said, in a safe, honest way that it's actually going to be considered. And I think hopefully some people get value from that. And
I'm happy to share that team collaboration canvas as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
I'll share that to you.
Yeah, that'd be great. I'm sure people will appreciate receiving that. One thing I wanted to sort of touch on that comes up a lot is there's a lot of maybe teams, maybe smaller teams within the larger organizations that maybe don't have the budgets that the big companies do, or maybe they're not at that sort of so they're not in that spot in the hierarchy of agile learning and all that. So if you're thinking about companies or teams that work very traditionally, I won't say waterfall, but traditional project management, and they want to make the transition to be more agile, both in ways of thinking and ways of working, what would be, two-part question, what would be some of the challenges you've seen, and then what would be some recommendations or advice for them to sort of dip their toe into it?
Challenges, I hate to say it's governance.
Sorry. We're trying to change that.
What I've seen over and over again is teams want to be agile, and teams themselves get it and they can do it, but then they're up against waterfall traditional style governance, where we don't start development until the specifications are signed off. We don't do specifications until all the planning's done. So there is those older traditional style stage gates that can absolutely kill a team trying to work agile. Hybrid or not hybrid is mostly waterfall in disguise, I hate to say. But depending on the team, of course, there's good hybrids, but there's mostly not. So for me, that's one of the biggest hindrance, the governance structures to support it. And often it's not just governance, it's management support that goes with it, that the teams want to be more agile. In fact, even the internal stakeholders are happy to be more agile, particularly if we're doing internal focused projects for internal stakeholder value delivery, for example, not so much external. They want to do it, but then, the IT manager or the CFO or someone like that comes along and goes, nope, it's got to be, they don't understand agile. They think agile is another word for anarchy. They think agile is another word for undiscipline. So they're the big barriers, is lack of management support and governance structures that don't support the agile way of just enough upfront and just in time. So figuring out that, and the remedy for that, in my mind, is as simple as a little bit of education and trust maybe like South Australia Water, I don't talk about them a lot, but one thing they did was they did some pilots where they put low risk projects and experimented with them. And we kind of, sounds like a weird thing. We sort of, with the PMO leader there, her name was Karen, we said, let's just pick one project and just leave it with us, ignore traditional governance, and we'll show you things differently. So let this project fall out. We'll still meet our audit requirements because we are a government department. We're still going to meet them. We're just going to do it differently. Showing that it can work by a pilot project, and then we had a couple more projects that we ran, and each one we used that to present and review, not just by getting our execs into a training course. No, we did it through demonstrable actual work happening and showing that it can be done discipline. So management and governance is the big barrier. Showing proof in the pudding is the remedy there.
So interesting, because I don't know, you probably know whether this is true or not, but my assumption when it comes to the management piece is, I know, being someone who's done Agile training as being a trainee, rather, like my training, I think might have been 4 days years ago when I first got into Agile training. So it's a lot of time. Now, as a busy executive, and I know as a CEO these days, I probably couldn't afford that time. So do you think that the management part is because they're not dedicating the time to undertake the learning because maybe they either don't have time or think they don't have time?
Absolutely. I think that's the scourge of everyone. No one has time these days, and they just as much as anybody else. So if they want to come to training, if you can even get them into a few hours, which we managed to do with our teams when I was at South Australia Water, including the CEO and the minister, just to explain a smidge about why Agile's needed, not story points and sprints, but why it works, dealing with uncertainty and reducing waste and maximising value. If we just focus on the key points, but you don't have to do it in formal training. That's where I feel there is a huge need for good facilitator, coaches, scrum masters, because that role is actually supporting people to understand how Agile's meant to work. But not enough time, and an unwillingness to put aside time to actually learn and actually understand can be a big problem. Excuse my bird in the background.
No worries. Hearing you on, it obviously agrees with what you're saying. It's interesting. We did, you and I did some training with Toyota, not that long ago. And obviously, for those who wouldn't know, what we did to adapt to the fact that the team leads didn't have the time is we broke up some training into an hour a week over 8 weeks, I think it was, from memory. And that was really quite successful and useful. And it probably was easier for them to accept than having an 8-hour day. But there's lots of things that we could do using that Agile mindset to actually bring a flexible approach to help that learning, but it has to be a willingness for them to want to change. And I find that executives, a lot of them, at least I've been working with them for so long, that my experience is they talk the big talk about, you need to do this and we want to be Agile and we want that, but they don't really understand it enough to be able to, I guess, appreciate the things that need to change, particularly when it comes to governance. And that's why you're still expected to do a 20, 30-page steering committee pack to report when your teams are trying to work in an Agile way, and that just takes time. So I think you're 100% nailed on the head with those two challenges. I would agree with you wholeheartedly.
Yeah, absolutely agree. So that willingness is really needed, and the amount of times you hear, we want to be more agile, but hang on, we don't want to change anything.
100%.
You want to do something differently, guess what you have to change? The other part that you asked about was, how would I start a team wanting to be Agile?
Yes.
And training is great, but it's not the only way.
Yes.
I set up, so again, with some of the teams I've worked with over the last 5 years, one thing I love to do is actually pull out that good old Agile manifesto. As I said, I still refer to it, and unfortunately it is memorized. I do have it, not willingly, I just use it so frequently I know it back and front. But I start by looking at those 12 guiding principles, and we work through with our team and talk about, well, what does this mean to us? How does each individual principle, how does it apply to our work? And what do we want to do to try to be more aligned and guided by this principle? So how do we change our work? That's how I like to start a team. Doesn't have to start with training, just start by mindset, using those principles of just breaking it down. Not a lot of teams I see, 3 people go to a Scrum Master training course, they come back and they try to do it by the book.
Yes.
By the time it falls over.
Yes.
So start by just understanding these principles and start thinking about, well, what are we going to do to gradually move to this, instead of thinking bang overnight with something completely changing. And I do apologise, my bird has.
No, it's fine. It adds to the value of the conversation by having that background music.
Well, he likes to sing and talk. So his name is Billy, and you can hear him talking. So
what kind of bird is it?
It's a cockatiel.
Okay, oh, beautiful. I think your approach to that is really well considered, because if you don't understand the principles behind, and like you said, there's lots of things out there that relate to Agile. It's not like it has to be one thing or the other, but the manifest is a good place to start. By no means exhaustive. I do struggle with sometimes when people say, it's only relevant for IT, and it's like, just because it's something to start somewhere, it's absolutely not. We're seeing that now apply in industries across the board, and in not just in IT. So it's really interesting to see sort of how all that comes together. I think there's definitely a lot of different aspects that we can continue to talk about. I know that from when I introduced you earlier that you are studying psychology, which is so close to mindfulness and mindset. So I guess just wanted to kind of close out on that piece there, and if there's anything you want to share in terms of like the mindfulness side of it. And I presume your psychology links to the passion that you have around mindfulness, which is really what your business Mind at Work is all about.
That's right. So for me, again, going back to what is an agile mindset, it's an attitude, it's a thought process. Well, mindfulness is nothing more really at the bottom of, if you distill down all the theories that are out there, and there are no shortage of people advocating mindfulness means this, that, or the other thing. It all boils down to awareness. And it's really about being aware of what is in our mind. What are we thinking? How are we approaching it? What is my attitude? Sounds like mindset to me, right? So if we apply our mindfulness by continuously checking in with our mind, our thought processes, and saying, am I thinking with an agile mindset, or am I thinking perhaps in a more traditional non-agile way? So applying mindfulness to agile is what I realized many years ago when I was working in a government department actually, and realizing that if I'm applying mindfulness, I'm going to be more patient with my team, I'm going to be more willing to listen and focus, but I'm also going to be better able to understand whether I have kind of gone back to older ways of thinking and non-agile mindset ways of thinking, and I can stop it, cut it off, and redirect. Because mindfulness can allow you to become aware that you're maybe not thinking in the most agile way possible, and so you can actually kind of willingly choose your mindset, because we actually have control over our mindset. 100%. Some people just don't want to. Don't want to. I mean, I must qualify that saying not everyone has different mental abilities, and of course there are people out there with all sorts of mental illnesses and mental I don't want to use the word issues because I don't want to make it sound bad, but we are all
challenges around that, absolutely.
So all things kind of equal, I know some people do have difficulties with some elements of mind, but the broad population without any of those issues, when we apply mindfulness, we can choose our mind attitude. We can choose to be grumpy, or we can choose to be positive. It's actually a choice. To most of us. So, and I think that's why I look at it, because that's how I learnt it from that side. I learnt mindfulness all about dealing with stress and happiness and things like that. But then I realised it can be used to say I can apply an agile mindset, or I can forget about it and not be aware that I'm not actually thinking based on the mindset principles that are key to making agile work successfully.
And it's just about being open. I mean, I resonate with the mindfulness space because I'm very public that I've had an anxiety disorder for most of my adult life. And one of the things they teach you in those, in the sessions with psychologists and a lot of the work I do with Beyond Blues, it's thoughts, feelings, and behaviors in that sort of triangle. So you do, like you said, for the most part, most of us have control over the thoughts and feelings we have, and then that instigates the behavior that we take. So you're absolutely right that you can change the way you think about things. It's not easy and it does take time, but it then can lead to different and new behaviors. So it all
is not the enemy. Thoughts are not the enemy, and thoughts do drive feelings. There's a weird thing, because when you're thinking and you're catastrophizing or something like that, if you allow yourself to keep going, then that anxiety builds. And it happens to, I think, nearly everyone gets anxiety of some type or another. It's quite natural, and some people it gets a bit more extreme. And I know that you've had an amazing, time overcoming and working with yours, and I know that we all it's great to see that you've used and understand that mindfulness can be a good part to be aware of those thoughts. The more awareness we can shine on the thoughts, the more likely we can say, hang on, this thought is not helping me. This thought is not helping me. So let's forcibly replace it with another thought. Even if that other thought is Mary had a little lamb, it's like this kind of thought transplant, and then the thought transplant can drive a different emotion, different feeling, and then that can obviously hopefully result in a different behavior. But yeah, that's great.
100%. I mean, it's all intertwined and it all makes sense. It's just being aware and being able to understand it in the first instance is the most important part before you can make any change. So this has been a fascinating conversation. How can people get more involved with Mind at Work Consulting, and where can people get more information about you?
So my website is about to have a major drama. A lot of things are happening, but look, it's still up. But definitely, if you want to share my LinkedIn profile, that's the best and most direct way to get in touch with me and anything that I do. I do post and blog about things on LinkedIn. My website, as I mentioned, there's a problem with my provider, and I've been not locked out, but it's a bit out of date and it needs to be redone. So yes, there's a website. You can contact me there, but LinkedIn is definitely the number one choice. I'm the only Kathy Berkidge on planet Earth, so it shouldn't be a problem finding me.
Wow, I'm very lucky. Even my name, I thought my name was unique, but clearly yours is more unique. No, that's great. I'll definitely include that in the show notes. Before we wrap up, Kathy, is there anything else you'd like to share with our listeners, a call to action, a piece of advice, or a question to ponder?
Wow. I feel like you put me on the spot a little bit, but really, I just think curiosity and willingness to learn, make sure that, when we're thinking agile, we need to bring in that curiosity. And so don't stop and rest on your laurels. Always think, is there something else? Be curious about, can we do something different? Can we do something better? No matter how awesome you think your team is and how agile you think you're running, be curious. Maybe there's something else.
Absolutely. Well said. And always be learning, as they say. Thank you so much, Kathy, for joining us. I'm sure people are going to get a lot of value from this conversation, and we'll share all of the information in the show notes. But it's been a pleasure having you on the show.
It's been awesome to talk to you too, Fatima. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening to this podcast. Please share this with someone or rate it if you enjoyed it. Don't forget to follow us on social media, and to stay up to date with all things Agile ideas, go to our website www.agilemanagementoffice.com. I hope you've been able to learn, feel, or be inspired today. Until next time, what's your Agile idea?